Yes, and we are recording. Greetings, everybody. If you do not want to be recorded, feel free to shut off your camera, change your name, and we wouldn't even know that you were here. Awesome. Okay. So, welcome to our Agile Austin Leaders Special Interest Group. Do remind to stay on mute if you join, or else I'll assist you in muting you. And today we're August 6th. Yes, we weren't here in July because of July 4th, and we are here. So folks, for those of you that might not have the chance, and I'll do that also right now, feel free to put your name, where you're joining from. I'm based in Austin, but I'm presently in Milwaukee, so I'll put that too. And your role and anything else you'd like to put, right? Do you want to put a link to your LinkedIn? You want to put like job opportunities you're searching for or would like to share? Feel free to interact on the chat. Yay. For those of you that might not be aware, I think the best thing to say is just go to agileaustin.org if you'd like to learn more about Agile Austin. We're just a professional nonprofit organization that works collaboratively in just growing the awareness of Agile, like Agile values and principles, all things Agile we do. And if you're not aware, sponsors, we want to say a shout out to our sponsors. Okay, if you are a sponsor of one of these groups, do share it on the chat. Shout out to Platinum Agile Velocity and all the other folks, Kasasa, which had hosted a lot of our sessions, et cetera, et cetera. A lot does not happen without the sponsors. And we have various special interest groups as part of the Agile Austin community. Ned, our speaker today, he facilitates the book club. Once I get in the habit of reading books, I think I'll join that one. I'm still stuck on blogs and shorter things for now. It's a development opportunity for me. Jim is here too, and he does the lean Kanbans stuff too. And there are a bunch of other ones, Scrum Master, Agile at Scale, Coaching, SIGs. Feel free to check them out. And I think the easiest thing to do, if you just want to get the communications, go to Agile Austin. Actually, first go to Meetup and then search by Agile Austin and subscribe. And then you'll get all of the ones that we do. And give me a second. I have to mute someone. Isn't that awesome how you just have the power as the facilitator over Zoom? It's just like, I sometimes feel that my wife would like to have that power over me, sometimes in conversations, but that's another story for another time. What do we do in the Leader SIG? Our purpose here is just to knowledge share in regards to leading Agile adoptions and transformations. So whether, and that could be anybody could help lead an Agile transformation. It could be a developer, a tester, an Agile consultant, whatever the role is, we like to come together and share and learn from each other. I have been the facilitator of this SIG for 10 years, and I'm actually gonna speak about that, about an upcoming event. We started in November 2011. Max Akesi is my name. I'm presently an enterprise Agile coach at Whole Foods. But breaking news, my last day at Whole Foods will be next Friday. So the next time we meet, I'll have their manager at PayPal instead, right? I'll still be in Austin. I'll still be the Agile Austin president. I've been on the board. I've been part of the organization for like 12 years. I was vice president last year, president this year. And if you want to ping me at any time, my email's there, and I use LinkedIn. I think that's one of the only social media tools I use. I'm trying to expand. You know, we meet every first Friday of the month. We always have a guest speaker, and we try to make this as interactive and include Q&A as much as possible. But 1 hour is a short amount of time, so bear with us. We used to meet in person. I'm not sure if people remember those days because it feels so long ago. And you know, we used to meet in Austin at Kasasa and Agile Velocity. Awesome for them to have us as hosts. But hey, we still meet. we still meet. And I think that what's awesome is that in the chat, as people join and say where they're joining from, it's just awesome to see people join from, like, not just outside of Austin or outside of Texas, but from various continents. And so we truly are global. It's awesome. I'm not going to go through all the details of the upcoming SIGs in the interest of time. Today we have Ned. He'll introduce himself and talk about team topologies. Terry is going to be joining us from Houston in September, and Kemi is going to be joining us from Toronto, Canada in October. And November is going to be our 10-year anniversary for this leader SIG. Can we have a round of applause there? Okay, so we can, yes, 10 years. And I think that the best thing about longevity is that you see trends. You can experience the evolution. So we're going to talk about them. I'm going to put together a panel and talk about Agile in the last 10 years. Just from this SIG, I'll just share very quickly that when we started meeting in November 2011, a lot of things were still very new to people in the Agile world. So we were talking about how can we train people effectively in doing Scrum? How can we train people in doing release planning? How can we train people? Like, it was all about, you know, training people on story point estimation and all these things. Fast forward to where we are today, and Agile is so mainstream that now we're talking about true transformation and team empowerment and all these things that it really feels awesome that we have evolved to this point. But I wonder what we'll talk about in November about what other people have experienced in this 10 years that we've gone through in Agile. I will just end with saying, again, if you haven't had the chance, in the chat, put where you're joining from, your role, and any job opportunities you might be searching for or you have available at your company. And Ned should be back at this point, right? Ned is probably on mute.
Yeah, of course I'm on mute. I wouldn't want to get in your way, Max.
No. The Max Akesi show is over. I will stop sharing. And folks, can we have a round of applause for Ned, who is going to talk to us about team topologies and Conway's Law. Woo! Woo, woo. Yeah.
At least I hope so. Can you see the screen?
Not. You've started sharing. Okay. We don't see anything yet.
You don't see anything yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
But let's keep on cheering up Ned on the chat.
Yeah.
All right.
Now you can see it?
Woohoo, yeah.
Okay, good.
We see it. We see
Real
you.
good. That's that. Yeah, whoops. Going a little too fast. Okay, so my name is Ned Horvath. I've been with Agile Austin even longer than Max. I joined early on, like in 2007, I think it was when we first started off. But I was living in New Zealand, so it was a bit of a stretch. I've been using Zoom longer than anybody else here. So, you know, just to keep in touch with people back home and so forth. Anyway, there's my LinkedIn address. I don't use what's that bird thing anymore very much. Anyway, it's there, and there's my email address as well. And so, welcome to today. So, Team Topologies this is not exactly a book report, but it's something similar. So, shameless plug. We read interesting books at in the book club. Last night we started rereading Reinertsen's Principles of Product Development Flow, which is a classic, and I'm getting reacquainted with it all over again, and it's really wonderful. Go get the book and catch up and meet us in 2 weeks. But this was a former choice, the Team Topologies book, and I'll give you a bunch of references at the end. Also, I want to apologize. This is the first time I've given this talk, so it's going to be rough in spots. I want your comments, okay? You can put them in the chat, or you can whatever. I will publish a link to this application, or sorry, to this presentation, and you can put your comments right in the presentation, and I'll pay attention to those. And the next time I give this talk, people will benefit from your help. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and quickly, Ned, we will be sending out a link to the recording of this, and I'll also include all the chat comments.
Excellent.
And the meetup. So.
Okay, so as I say, you'll also have a link that you can comment on this. So please do that. It'll improve it for the next people. So Mel Conway came up with this observation in 1967. I've included a link at the end to his original paper, which was out for several pages, and his conclusion is in like the third to last paragraph, and he apologizes for that. But he said, you know, he made this observation that any organization will produce as a design that is structured after the way that the organization itself is structured. And once you hear that, you say, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And so to take to come up with a little bit of a stalking horse here, I can't seem to advance. There we go. So, if this is the way you look in your organization, just to take a kind of a straw man, if you got a database team, you organized in functional silos, this is a straw man. We don't do this anymore, right? Well, maybe you do at your company. I hope not. But if you get,
sorry, Ned, my page hasn't advanced. I don't know if others.
it hasn't. Okay.
I mean, like it has for me. We are on the database team and the UX team.
Okay. Yeah, these are also called informally the plumbers, the carpenters, and the painters, at least in my head. But if you have these three teams, they're going to go and say, hey, you know what? We found this great way to do things. It's called model view controller. It's perfect because we can focus on the model, and that's all we have to do. So the database people and the controller, that's where all the business logic goes. We can work on that, and we can be independent of each other, and we can make things go really well. Except, of course, that when you look at the way this actually winds up coming out in the product, these things are intimately communicating with each other all the time. Every time the user sneezes on the screen, it sends a message to the controller. The controller has to figure out whether to talk to the database or not, and then they have to respond something to the front end, which of course means that the communications when you're building this product between the teams also have to be pretty dense and pretty intimate. Unfortunately, if one of these teams is in Europe and one's in Asia and one's in America, there's never a time when any two of them are awake, let alone on the job together, right? So so the communications have to be dense and they're fraught. Again, this is kind of a stalking horse. It's kind of a straw man. It's going to be hard to do this because of the limitations of the organization. And sooner or later, if you have the right, typical organization, somebody's manager is going to say, "Don't talk to those guys," right? Because they both work for a different manager that I'm competing with right now. So don't talk to those guys. But you have to. You can't get away without doing that. So without burying the lead, the reverse Conway maneuver says, well, if the resulting architecture is going to reflect the organization, why not start with the architecture and evolve the organization to match up with a good architecture for the product? Sounds easy, right? We'll spend the rest of this hour talking about why it's not, okay, or things you need to watch out for when you do that. But this is the right thing to do, right? You get the organization designed properly, and then it'll build a product that really, really works well, and we'll be able to build it with some speed. So, this is not a new idea, by the way. In fact, this is a quote from The Art of Action, and I'll let you read it for yourself, but it basically says it's easier to give soldiers less to think about than it is to make the soldiers smarter. And again, that's kind of what, yeah, okay, that makes sense, duh, okay? And Steve has two specific things that he's drawn from von Clausewitz and von Moltke and Sun Tzu and so forth, that basically you want to reduce the amount of communication between units. You want units to have cohesion. You want them to have well-integrated missions, and you want them to be able to communicate between units at a relatively low bandwidth, okay? This is also an idea that's come out of, again, I don't know how many of you were developers, but developers in the group will recognize these same principles as you want high cohesion. You want the thing you're working on, you want the classes you're designing to have a single mission and all the things, no Swiss Army knives. You want to have components that have a single mission, if you will, that have everything is well integrated, everything is that you need is there, and nothing that you don't need is there. That's what cohesion means here. And low coupling, again, you want to reduce the communication between components. You want to have very few people you talk to. There's another one, similar idea called the law of Demeter, which again, it goes back 35 years in the object-oriented game. Each unit should have limited knowledge about the other units, should only talk to its friends, don't talk to strangers, and by the way, only talk to your immediate friends. Don't talk to, talk to the barista. Don't talk to the guy grinding the coffee in the back. Okay, he's got a different role. He's helping the barista get the coffee ready. Talk to the barista. Tell them what you need. They'll try to figure it out. Okay, again, these ideas are not new, but I think we need to put them put them to work a little bit more. Let's see if I can advance the slide here. I seem to have not getting that to happen here. Oh, there we go. So again, what are we doing? We're going to try to reduce cognitive load, the amount of thinking you have to do. And how do we do that? Limit the mission, limit the number of things you have to keep track of, and have high cohesion. The things you work on are all of a kind. and limit communications. The types, the paths, the number, you intra-group, you want to talk to your friends. You want to talk to people within your own group and your immediate neighbors. That's where you want to focus on things. So how do we feel about all hands meetings? You know, anybody been to an all hands meeting on Zoom in the last couple of months? Yeah, we all have, right? Managers love to have these all hands meetings. It makes them feel important. What value do they provide? Well, they must provide value to the manager, but maybe that's the only person that does.
Oh, Ned, I do like all hands.
I know you do, Max. It's how you get your coffee and your beer.
I mean, it's nice to hear from some of the top tier leaders about why we're doing great, continue, and then shut up and be gone, right?
Short all hands meetings are fun. I got no problem with that. Better yet, cut a video and distribute that, and then I can watch it when I want to and not have to pay attention. But you don't feel important when I just watch your video an hour later, or a day later, or a month later, or not at all. Anyway, how do we connect how do we do this, right? What kinds of connection topology? We already talked about one of them. You know, this makes the guy at the top feel good. Here's another connection topology you might recognize if you can hear the water flowing from left to right. And here's another one. This is what the airports like. This is what the airlines like to do, called hub and spoke, or just a star-shaped topology. All of these do have certain advantages, especially to the guy at the top and the one on the left, and the guy in the middle and the one on the right, right? Because they feel really important. And the other thing is it's cheap. If you'll notice, the number of connections is always one less than the number of components. It's inexpensive. It may not be effective. If the guy in the middle drops dead in that star network, everybody stops talking to everybody else. And also it's unrealistic. As I said, somebody over there in that left picture is going to say, don't talk to those guys. Hey, I have to talk to those guys. It doesn't show the real relationships that are in that team, okay? In a lot of cases, again, the testers in that waterfall picture, the testers are working with the people doing the design to make sure that they can get ahead of the game. So people are going to talk outside of the connection topologies, which means you don't understand your connection topology because people are talking outside of it and you're not really able to monitor it effectively. You think you can, because you can break it, right? You can stand in the middle and watch everything go by, but in fact, you're missing the stuff. Here's another kind of simple way to describe things. It's called a complete graph. Everybody talks to everybody else. Well, okay, you know, Metcalfe once said that the value of a network is the square of the number of people in it. And that's what he was talking about, is this where everybody can talk to everybody else. This is the answer to the question, how many handshakes does it take to get 10 people to all shake hands? And the answer is about the square of the number of people in the room. It's 45 in this case, okay? Or in the case of 6, it'd be about 6 times 5 over 2, 15 different handshakes, okay? If you're mathematical, you already know that formula. If you're not, I'm not gonna bother you with it. But the problem with this, of course, is that if everybody talks at once, if you try to hold all these conversations at once, you've already got too many conversations going on. So there's lots of noise there. So what should we do here? Well, back to the reverse Conway maneuver, start with the right architecture and structure the organization to match. Well, if you got a small project to do, let's see how that plays. Let's see, how about we get the small number of people, like 3 to 10 or so, put them in one room, feed them with 2 pizzas, call it a scrum team, and then they can ignore the links that they don't need right now. And they can reconnect them if they need them, right? So this says you can always evolve the architecture. You can design it any way you want because you got all the links you need. You just throw away the ones you don't need right now. And oh, by the way, once a day, whether you need to or not, you reconnect all the links and you call it a daily scrum. Okay, everybody on board with this? This is the reverse Conway maneuver. You just let people organize things the way they need to. So thank you. Short talk today. Well done. Well, not really. Let's go a little deeper. Okay. If you're not, in fact, some of the things we're going to talk about now actually work within a team, because the notion of these team topologies, they work fractally. So within a single Scrum team, you're still going to have some small team or some sub-team dynamics. So the rest of this talk might be relevant. If not, you can leave now, but I think the rest of it might help you as well. So this is an idea, this notion of coupling. We talked about how many different connections are there and so forth. And again, this kind of comes from graph theory, and I'm not going to insist that you go learn graph theory, but you can probably learn enough to say, you know, they count the arrowheads on each of these nodes, and an A node, an afferent link, says I'm talking out to something else, right? I'm listening to something else is coming to me for dependency. So the one on the top there says, there's nobody depending on me. My A is 0, but I'm depending on this other module over here. My efferent connections are 1. I got 1 arrow out and no arrows in. And you can look at the rest of these nodes and notice that they've also got, a certain number of arrows in and a certain number of arrows out. But what I'm going to do next is we're going to do something called again, for those of you graph theorists, I'm going to do the closure of those numbers. If I can get my screen to advance. There we go. Hopefully you can see that now. And in this case, I've said basically how many things are either do I depend on either directly or indirectly. I'm only going to talk to my immediate friends, and that's what that first set of numbers does. But this says, how critical am I to the organization? And I want you to look at that one that's labeled A in the middle. It says, the number of things that depend upon me is 5. The number of things I depend on is 0. And by the way, that's good. Okay, a good design principle, I'll just throw that out there. You want one of these numbers to be 0. Either you depend on people or they depend on you. The guy over here in the lower right corner, or the guy labeled C, those guys have 2 missions. They both depend on other people and people depend on them. That's tricky. That's tricky because you're depending on other people. So you've got those dependencies and you got to manage that relationship, but you also have to serve your customers. Okay, so if you got an arrow into you, you've got customers that you need to serve. And it's very easy to get confused about which of those things you're going to do. Okay, so again, you want to try to avoid that as just a general rule. You want to avoid that mixed mission approach. You want to either have one of these numbers be 0 if you possibly can. So that's, again, kind of talking about that. Saying, how do you manage that? Well, if you've got a lot of things that depend on you, you need tight API disciplines. Okay, there's another idea from object-oriented programming called the open-close principle that says you're open to extension, you're open to doing new things, but you're closed to changing old things. And what does that mean? Your customers can depend on you. The closed means your current customers can depend on you to keep on doing what you're doing. But your new customers, if you have a customer with a new need, you're willing to add some capability, perhaps, okay, to what you provide. All right. The high F components, the high effluent people who have nobody depending on them, that's where you play your lean startup games. Those guys, nobody depends on me. I can move fast and break things because nobody's depending on me to keep things working. So that's where you want to put those teams. Okay, those are the components you want to be able to change fast. And when you have split personalities, you really want to focus on a single responsibility. Okay, those things have to have really, really good cohesion because they have both things they depend upon and people that depend on them. So that's kind of a tough one. Okay, those are the hard cases, the ones that are hard to keep your head in the game because you're focused on customers and focused on your mission as well. It's tough.
Hey, so Ned,
sure.
Sorry, before you start on this slide, we have a couple of questions in the chat. Do
Okay,
you want
go
to
ahead.
Pause afterwards, or should we?
We can do it right now. That's fine with me.
Okay, so I'm going to start with one that had to do about the all hands. Dave was asking, what about all hands that are focused on one group? We had none in the product department, and we never knew who was in the product department and probably what the other folks were doing.
Well, again, is what you're doing, is what the other folks are doing impacting your job? Or are you doing this just for social reasons because you move people around, you want to make sure that everybody knows everybody else, right? I got no problem with all hands for social reasons. Bring out the beer and the pizza. I'm fine with that, although it's hard to do it virtually. But no, I mean, I don't object to all hands meetings. I object to ego-driven all hands meetings that don't really provide any information. And you know which ones I'm talking about, right?
I've never been to those in 20 years of corporate.
Oh, I'm sure you haven't.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So I'll speak up real quick. And the main reason I bring it up is because this company it is being driven in a weird way where we have a lot of growth. And because of that, we have a lot of people that are lost when it comes to who they need to talk to. And this is in particularly true for a company like Ignite, where we have people in Poland, in the Bay Area, and right now, it doesn't really matter anymore because everybody's remote at the same time. So yes, everybody's affected, but it's not a full, they don't see me every day, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I would totally endorse that. In fact, one of the things that in my past where I've had to manage teams that were globally distributed, I've always gone to my manager that I need money for airplane tickets. because we need to play together now and then so that we establish human relationships. So I mean, if that's the purpose of the all hands, by all means, go right up with it. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. I speak in simple terms because I'm a simple person. But I told it's much more nuanced than that. And obviously, do it when it makes sense. I forget. Someone once told me that trust has a half-life of about 6 months. So you need to play together in order to reestablish that trust and reestablish that human communication. I miss the herd aspects of being a human in the time of COVID. I really miss it a lot. Okay, we need to be herds. We need to get together and smell each other from time to time. Right? Watch the way dogs play. We need that too. We're just humans. We're just like dogs.
And after talking about smelling each other, let's go on to the next question.
Okay.
About
next question.
Bill. What does RPA do to dependencies, especially the dysfunctional ones?
What does what do to they?
RPA. Not sure what that is an abbreviation for. If Bill can come off mute real quick and just explain that real quick.
Robotic programming, basically. It's all the no code stuff, for example. And the reason I'm bringing it up is I see we are also developing data teams now with all the data engineers and scientists. We're doing DevOps, et cetera. We're getting a lot of teams going back to your thing, perhaps, that you had in the 60s.
Let me hold that one, Bill, because I think I'm going to come back to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I think I'm going to address that.
And then a last one before you continue. I think you mentioned a straw man at some point in your presentation, and someone asked, will you define the straw man? And maybe you've
all I meant by a straw man was I'm going to show something which is ridiculous so I can make fun of it. Okay. And that's what the whole model view controller discussion was about. Okay.
Makes sense. Shoot on.
And again, I'm sorry, if your company still organized functional silos like that, I'm sorry, you need to fix your company or get out. Right? Because it's just not we don't do things that way anymore. We just don't, at least not successful companies. So find one that's going to be successful. Go work for Dave. He'll take care of it. Okay, so let me try to move on if I can. It looks like I did. So actually getting back to the book a little bit, they actually define, you don't have to take these numbers, but I think it provides a nice taxonomy thinking about the functions. They talk about value streams, and this is the one we sort of think about when we talk about Scrum teams traditionally, right? They turn stories into products, right? And that's really their function. They have lots of things they depend upon, perhaps, but nobody depends on them. Okay, or at least very few people depend on them. Their job is to look at the customer requirements and crank out product. That's their job. Sometimes they need, and this I think is an attempt to talk to Bill's issue. Very often you'll have a team that they refer to as a complex subsystem, where if you have something like, for example, I mentioned an operations research solver. That's one in my past, where we had an engine that solved some very difficult operations research problems that was built into a larger application that obviously had to interact with humans and so forth. And they're the value stream people were building the basic user interface, that model view controller stuff. But there was this team of geniuses that was building this mathematical model engine. And that's something that the value stream didn't have to be concerned about. This is something driven by specialists, if you will, that provides a service to typically a single value stream, right? So we're not looking at complex subsystems as reusable code as much as we're thinking of them as one that serves a purpose that we can isolate something that's fairly hairy and get it out of the view of the value stream team. Okay, the third team that they identified is a platform team. And again, this kind of, in the age of DevOps, these are the people who make sure the DevOps tooling is in place. So they might be working with the CI/CD and so forth. This is a service organization. It's high efferent, right? Lots of people depend on it. And they're providing typically self-service services to the value stream. So the value streams, I need to set up a test rig to do some performance testing. I need to put 4 VMs together, and I need to bring up some VMs and put some code on them and run them. The platform team would be the organization you would turn to and say, please do this. These days, this might be AWS, right? They're the teams that they're supplying. I haven't checked in the last 10 minutes, but they provide dozens or hundreds of services, and by this afternoon, there'll be more. Right, so they keep adding more and more services to it. they're providing this kind of stuff. You still have to know how to use it. So you may need a platform team, a thin platform team, even if you're using AWS, to make sure you deal with AWS in a way that doesn't break the bank, gets you what you need, identifies the services that you can best use and things like that. So these are people that can help you out with that. And the last team that they identify is an enabling team that provides consulting, expertise. They look for trouble. They look for things that are, technologies that are aging out that you might have to get off of, or emergent technologies that you might want to take advantage of. They're consultants, if you will, and they provide expertise and cross-team assistance, maybe some R&D. An example of that in our typical Scrum team is the Scrum Master. Scrum Master doesn't write code, doesn't provide platform support, doesn't do any of that stuff. The purpose of the Scrum Master is to enable the rest of those teams, the particular team, to go fast by helping them with their product, with their structure. Okay.
I think shared services would fall into this category. So
I'm sorry, say again?
shared services, I imagine, would fall into this
I think so, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so security consultants or
That's a really good example.
DevOps people or whatever.
Really good example, right? People that provide expertise. DBAs might fit in this category if they're scarce in your company, and you want to have enough database experience in your value stream team to be able to do what they need to do every day, but they might need a consultant to come and help them out. Or I hear about this NoSQL stuff. How does that work? You probably want somebody to come and help you talk about that rather than just jump into it on your own. Perhaps, okay. And as I mentioned before, teams can have sub-teams of any type. So within a given Scrum team, for example, you can think about, there are probably people who, there's Bill and Mary both really understand databases well. They're going to be the complex subsystem team for that aspect of our value stream. They're going to be the go-to people for that, for example. Or this guy really understands AWS, or this gal really understands AWS. They're the go-to people for platform type stuff, even if we're using some other platform team. There's somebody that interfaces to that. So within a team, you can think of these roles as well, or even within a single Scrum team. So I advise you. And again, it's a mental hardware to help you think about how you organize your team, even internally. Okay, so you can have sub teams. Let's see if I can advance here. I don't know. There we go. So they also talk in the book about relationships, and the most common one would be the one we kind of drew on our node map. X as a service. It's the usual one-way dependency. Sometimes you need collaboration between teams, and this is one to watch carefully, because if it goes on for a long time, it's going to be slowing you down. It indicates you may have factored the teams incorrectly. Hint, coming attraction. If you get too much collaboration going on, it might be a sign that there's something wrong. Now, the complex subsystem is the exception to that. You expect the complex subsystem team that's serving a single stream team to be in close collaboration with them at least some of the time, if not most of the time. Okay, and again, you're going to be defining and evolving APIs. How does two teams talk together? These days, it's mostly APIs, right? That's mostly what we do. We used to define, programmer APIs. Now we define typically network APIs to do that. And there's lots of tools to help with that. And the third relationship is facilitation, which is basically what the enabling team is doing. Their job is to help you get things done, not necessarily to do it for you, but to help you get it done. So I'm not going to spend, sorry, go ahead. Question?
Sorry, someone did ask the name of the book.
Sorry, Team Topologies. Duh. It's right there in the name of the talk. And again, there'll be a link
There
at the
could
end.
have been something else added
Could have
to
been,
that.
but it's not.
Could have been.
It's not.
Valid question. Okay.
This is another taxonomy they give. This reminds me of, how do you do story splitting? They have some ideas here about how you might want to find the team boundaries. I'm not sure any of these is all that valuable, but you might think about how you might do it. The first one makes sense. Business domains, a particular set of functions might be a good way to chop a team off. The last one I think appeals to me as well, where you have people that are serving a particular market might want to be a stream team that serves that market or that collection of user personas, right? So the user stories, again, we do story splitting to say we need to do X, but it looks different for students than it does for faculty, than it does for staff, to take my own company as an example of that. So you might have different personas being served by different stream teams, as an example. Performance might be a determination, risk might be a question. Technology is probably not the right way to split things. That sounds like functional splitting again, and it's probably not a good idea. But again, any of these things might be a good reason to split teams along a particular fault boundary.
So
And-
Ned,
Sure.
using, the afferent, you talked about one side being 0, but what about both sides being 0? Isn't that the ideal?
Well, the ideal is a
approach-
scrum team, right?
Yeah, if you can get it down to where the team owns the business domain, then
That's even better.
or a tribe going with the Spotify model. And
Uh-huh.
I think that's where the business domain bounded context would take you, right?
It would indeed. But again, within that bounded context, you're still going to have people who lean in the direction of being platform supplying or stream supplying or enablers or whatever, right? You still,
Yeah,
again,
you
I think
still have a shared services and so
Absolutely.
on. Yeah,
you
and
can still have shared services. So use
Which-
this fractally.
which brings up reuse, right?
Yeah.
We're sort of throwing out our old conceptions about reuse, it seems. These models, because if you have components, the idea was that we only have one catalog.
Mhm.
Everybody refers to the catalog that the catalog team owns. We only have one pricer, right? So you got a website and you split up all of the responsibilities that way, which tends to maximize dependencies. And it seems like we're going away from that by going more
Does.
towards, yeah.
It does. I mean, it's people. I mean, when you look at the microservices papers, everybody says microservices should have their own database,
Yes.
which is fine, except that if we both have a user entity in our database, they will evolve separately and they will not be compatible, right? So there are some issues associated with this. We may be building the ETL wars of the future, and we probably are, right?
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Microservices spends a lot of time talking about how do you share that ID so that you're referring to the same person.
Yep.
You can have the data for the user refer to different aspects of the user so that, one microservice has a different collection of data that they're looking at, but how do you get to the same person in both cases? So how do you share that?
This is a great unsolved problem for the last 50 years, as far as I can tell. And it's not
Exactly.
solved yet.
But it's cool that the different microservices can decide their own tooling. So they
That
can
is
go in
correct.
different directions and find the tools that serve them best.
That is correct. Yeah, the microservices, but it's very much like that model view controller thing. I can use whatever tools I want to express the business rules, but it still has to talk to the other ends. It has to talk to the data and it has to talk to the front
Yeah,
end.
well, that's
through
where
the
the business,
APIs.
the
Through
business
the
domain
APIs.
bounded context would really help.
That's
If you
where it
could-
really helps. That's
Yeah.
where it is, the bounded
Then you
context.
don't have to talk to other people about it.
Boy, you hope not.
Well,
Except, eventually,
I
Yeah.
would love to share something, but don't want to take up too much of your time. It's around the two pizza
Oh.
teams and how it works in Amazon so well, what I experienced. But I wasn't sure if we have time for that.
I'd love to hear that, Max, and I'll leave you some time for that.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not far from the end. Okay. So again, human factors, I'm just going to mention this. This is not in the book, but or actually it is slightly in the book, but the teams that everybody depends upon are prone to gold plating, right? They don't have actually, and in fact, Don Reinertson recommends that you buy their services internally so that they have customers that you keep the customer focus on those teams that are supplying services to other teams. Okay, so that's one thing to watch out for. And the enabling teams are prone to go into the ivory tower. And I am a sinner here. I am guilty of this. You go off and you become so enamored of the thing that you're a specialist in that you go in and you start telling people how to be scrum masters, even if you aren't one yourself or haven't been one yourself. You studied it. I read all the books. I'm an academic. I understand all this stuff, but not the way it's actually practiced. So watch out for that too. Okay, and there's again, it's kind of there's just things I've seen happen. I've got scars for these. And the last thing they say in the book is, how do you get things going here? When you begin with the team, you want to identify the streams, the thinnest viable platform. Again, you want to have the dependencies really minimal. And again, ideally, farm them out to Microsoft Cloud or AWS or somebody like that. Identify your capability gaps. And I added this one, draft the APIs. The way you want to test your architecture is you want the teams that you've identified to talk about how they're going to talk together. You don't have to have it complete. I'm not saying you should do everything up front, but I'm saying you need to at least think about how are these teams going to communicate with each other. Think about those APIs.
Yeah, there's such a thing as contract-driven development. Right? So you develop the
That's-
contract first.
And that's really something that you want to focus, especially because we're doing this We're trying to take the advantage of this Conway inversion process is that you minimize the communications and simplify the communications. The thing microservices emphasizes is, look, we can evolve these things separately, and all they've done is drive all of the complexity into the network. That's what we're talking about here. How do these things talk to each other? Watch the network carefully, or you'll get burned. More wisdom from the field. This is from a different book we read in the book club, another shameless plug. Sam Newman works for, gosh, what's the name of the outfit? Anyway, same place that Martin Fowler works, ThoughtWorks. Really bright guys. And he talked about, identifying your bounded contexts, make sure they're modeled within your code base and so forth and so on. And then he says, and in this particular case we did at ThoughtWorks, we began to realize that we didn't really understand the problem well enough to split it properly. Notice this is on page 54, the immediate page after the one where he said that. So the lesson that I'm going to suggest from this is be humble. Okay, you're not going to get this right. You're subject to the cone of uncertainty, just like everybody else. Okay, as an architect, I don't care how experienced you are. So what are you going to do? I say, watch for that API churn. Hopefully you're keeping your APIs in GitHub or something similar so you can watch the traffic and you can see the wars going on. Track the frequency, headcount, and size of inter-team messaging. And because you're going to get it wrong, you're either going to want to refactor the architecture at some point, and that means you may want to refactor the teams as well, right? If you discover you got things wrong, and you probably did, you're going to want to do that. And everybody knows what the J curve is, right? When I make any change, things get worse for a while before they get better. So if I have to refactor the teams, they're going to have to reform, restorm, and renorm before they're going to perform again. Okay, so you're going to take a hit when you refactor your team structure, which means do it early so you get the benefit. Okay, this is easy to say and hard to do. These things, I mean, again, telling people you're going to work with these people, as Dave was referring to, we got people who don't know each other. Well, we're going to switch things around so the people you also don't know are now your new team, because we're going to refactor the teams. Okay, so this is a hard thing to do, which is why, again, as an architect, be humble going in and work hard on those connections. Work hard on defining the connections, defining the contracts between the teams early, and if you need to, make the changes you need to make early. And I think that's all I've got. So all I got is a conclusion screen. Let me jump past this one for a minute. Here's the references, including a link to Mel Conway's website, where he has his original paper stored, and some shameless pointers to some book club notes, where you can go read about these books as well as links to the books themselves. And that last one is also a document I wrote about the art of action, which is again in the book club notes. So it's all there. And if I can back up, so here are our conclusions. Reverse Conway, architecture drives the organization even within a single team. So use these ideas there as well. Stream teams can move fast. Service teams have to be conservative. Okay, and again, you keep track of people losing the customer focus if they're service teams. Watch those comms and draft those APIs early and refactor those teams. That's kind of the summary for the whole talk. Max, I think you've got some, I'll take questions, or you got some time to talk about Amazon.
And I can start. By the way, is there a book club that is going on? Do you want to plug it again? You want to plug it again?
I mentioned it. Yeah, we started reading Don Reinertsen's, or rereading actually, and it's worth the reread. We started rereading Don Reinertsen's Principles of Product Development Flow, which has a picture of a waterfall on the cover. The most unfortunate cover art I can imagine, because he is not a water flow guy. He's a flow guy, not water flow.
So it wasn't a joke. It wasn't actually a joke. Like they put it
in
there.
I can't imagine
Okay.
he liked it, but yeah, it's a joke as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, we're reading that book right now. Please join us in 2 weeks from yesterday to discuss the next chunk of it. Get reading now.
Awesome. So I'll start with a little story, then we have a bit of a Q&A. And yeah, this is, Ned, I'm so happy that you shared all this stuff in Team Topologies. And what struck me is one of the things I'm most excited about that I learned in the last 2.5 years. I've worked at Whole Foods for 2.5 years. And as a subsidiary to Amazon, and doing a lot of integration work on our apps with Amazon to grow the e-commerce presence on Whole Foods, and so that we can sell all our products through Prime, Amazon Prime, I got a lot of exposure to how they work in Amazon. And you see this large company, hundreds of thousands of employees and everything. But the one thing that they're fanatical about, actually, there's two things that they're fanatical about, is the customer. Like everything to get the customer happy and get value to the customer. They're not as fanatical about their warehouse employees and vendors and suppliers and stuff like. It's like the customer is king, right? But then the way that they work, they form a lot of two pizza teams. And two pizza teams, and not just because a lot of people talk about two pizza teams and say, oh, you know, the amount of people that you need to be fed by two pizzas, so 7 to 9 people. But it's actually all the people that you need from the business, from everywhere fit in the two pizza team. But then at first I was like, hold on a second. How can I have all these roles within 7 to 9 people? So I had to like peel the onion a bit and everything. And what I discovered is that people on these two pizza teams have multiple roles. Like you'll get like someone that is like a technical project manager, a product manager, scrum master, and gets into some of the architecture discussions also. And I'm like, that sounds stressful to me. That sounds like so much multitasking. It's impossible. But what is interesting is that when you form teams that are a very common term used as single threaded, like they only focus on one particular thing. It could be like, you know, on the Alexa shopping list, we're going to integrate all Whole Foods products. And that is their focus for 9 months. That's all they do. It's incredible how people can wear various hats and move very quickly when having to be very focused and have what you called 0 to 0 dependencies. Mm-hmm. That is a critical part because they move and they don't have to ask for permission from anybody. Whatever tools they want to use, they go and get them. Whatever they need, do you need a consultant to help you out with the Lambda DB stuff on AWS? You have the budget, go get it, right? And so like it even gets into HR stuff sometimes and having to bring people on board. And I've found that very fascinating because it has to do with team topologies and how you create teams. And then teams make a lot more decisions. The decision-making process is pushed down to the team tier. And I've just got to say, it's pretty outstanding. It's pretty outstanding what I've experienced.
Max, I think you have to give another talk. It leverages this one and tells us exactly. Do
you think people might be interested to hear more of that?
I would.
Okay, so questions. Let's see what other questions we might have. Folks, if you had a question and I can't see it yet, go off mute and ask it, please. Scrolling down.
Oh, okay. I can't really. If I grab the chat, I'll lose my screen. So
I have a question. I mean, this all seems the way it's being defined here, or the way I'm interpreting it, is that IT or engineering or development would be doing all this. And in my experience, I mean, some of the senior people are pretty good at this, but in a larger organization, wouldn't there be like HR or organizational management people or people over on the business side, execs, who would help try to figure out how to do this right? Or is this strictly focused among technical people who are not usually the most excited about communicating with other humans?
Well, if you're excited about not communicating with other humans, this is perfect, because the whole idea is to reduce your communications with other humans.
Make it efficient.
This is an introvert's dream, right? I think that the short answer is you really want the sponsorship for that program. You want the people that are, the rest of the organization needs to be driving those, the business contexts and the value streams. They need to be driving those value teams to helping them associate with the personas and the markets they want to reach and make sure that they're building the right teams, right? So the product management definitely wants to get involved with this at a goal setting level. But when we start talking about letting the architecture drive the organization, it's technical people who understand the architecture.
Right.
So in some sense, yeah, this is something that has to be delegated to the technical organization to be able to set up for themselves. Again, the more senior you are, these sorts of the human factors involved in getting teams to collaborate and so forth, those are kind of independent of technology. They depend upon the wisdom of having done it for a while and failed and succeeded, right?
But as far as
architecture, yeah.
I guess what I'm really asking is, where should a technical organization look externally to find people who would be good at helping them with the communication and the structure piece? Because they've spent most of their career focusing on the technical, and while they may have failed a bunch and then said, gosh, I need to know more about how to structure the architecture and the teams to match the architecture. Where do you go outside of the technical people to say, yeah, like you would to I don't know, to an HR person for negotiating benefits, or to somebody to help with the sales process? Are there other people outside technical who would have expertise that could be used to do this well? I guess that would be, in your experience.
I'm going to defer to the crowd on this one. I don't have a good answer for that.
Well, if you think about where we're going with this, that if you think you want to look at the bounded context, narrow that down. So you're looking at personas, right? Personas interact with the system. You have a system context diagram, right? There's a certain number of features. Those are interactions with the system from the user, right? So the product manager is familiar with the personas and can map out what features the persona is using. So, and then you give those collections of features to a team, perhaps. The other aspect you really have to worry about, the big aspect, is the architecture. So how does architecture map into features? So you need a matrix of architecture versus features diagram. And that'll help you to understand, well, are we going to be screwed royally here if we organize the teams one way or another? Because we're going completely across the grain. Or whatever. So you want to be thinking system context diagram. Well, who are the personas? What are the features that are their interactions with the system? How do we group those? What are good affinity mappings if you've got a large collection? Good affinity mappings of feature, and that's how you can proceed figuring out where your value streams are and how do you isolate work for the team.
I would probably go try to hire somebody out of Amazon to help me who's done it successfully and say, how did you guys do it? Can you help me decide how to do that?
There you go.
Maybe Max should be.
Not that it's always just
cheating,
Amazon that has the answers, okay?
It's not just
PayPal
Amazon,
has some answers too.
but they have a demonstrated track record that seems to be working well. So I always copy somebody who's figured it out. It's much better than inventing things.
Who's dominated like an industry or two.
Well,
there is another question in regards to people management. How does this approach affect people management? It appears that most orgs prefer like-minded managers to manage contributors and close proximity. Ooh, that's second part. Well, let's start with the question. How does this approach affect people management?
Depends on what you mean by people management, right? I mean, the traditional people manager was functional. Okay, so he had people reporting, he or she had people reporting to him who had a certain function.
Like
those
testing.
people, I think they still have something going on. In fact, one of the alternatives that I would propose to enabling teams, or to have the way to organize that enabling function, is to have communities of excellent practice. Now, I've merged a couple of ideas there, but what you're looking for is people who will get together. There's a group, for example, at UT that gets together for lunch once a month. They get together virtually for lunch now, but they get together for lunch once a month. They're all doing web development. They're all doing web user interface development. They get together, they trade problems and solutions. And so they'll present their solutions or they'll present their problems and they get together and talk about them again. That's the kind of thing that a functional organization used to provide and doesn't in this kind of organization. But people helping each other solve common problems of a technical nature is a great way to get things done. That's an enabling function, right, by this taxonomy. And it doesn't have to be done by people whose only job is enabling. It can be people whose job is delivering a certain kind of function, but talk to each other so that they work really well. I've seen I worked at another company that had something very similar. They get lunch at least once a week and trade problems. They were all the UI people. They would trade problems and solutions. And I used to sit in, I was a technical person, but I would sit in anyway because it was fun to watch what these guys were, the kind of problems they were trying to solve were wicked problems, and they were coming up with some really cool solutions. So it's you asked about all hands. I'd go sit on other people's hands and watch what happens. It's really fun.
Problem solving is an art, and it's so awesome to see it happen when done efficiently.
Fun to
my
watch.
goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And may I say, as much as I love the way that we're connecting through Zoom and everything, the most effective problem solving experience I've had are a bunch of people in front of a whiteboard. Just
Amen.
amen. So folks, one last quick question, if we have one. That will be it. Oh, there was a question, not to plug your book club one more time, Okay, but someone asked the author of the book, because maybe there might be more than one Team Topologies. Was it
I don't remember.
Matthew Skelton?
I don't remember. But if,
Okay.
but if I go and click on this button, it'll take me to the book club notes. And then I can click on the Amazon
Matthew
link that's
Skelton.
there.
No, I mean, it says it there. No, it said it there before you went. It was the line above it. Matthew Skelton. That was and somebody else.
But now you can just go buy the damn thing, right? And there it is. It's right there, and it's cheap. It's only $11.59 if you buy the Kindle. So as you can, everything I know is linked together with everything else I know. So if you can find anything that I know, you can find everything else. And you see, notice it says read now because I already own this book.
Commission on
I don't buy it. I only get. Well, the commission that I get is when we review one of these books, if you go to most of the sessions, we pay you, we reimburse you for the book because we have such great sponsors. Coming back to the very first slide, Max, we have such great sponsors that we can actually buy books for people who choose to read them and engage with the book club. So I didn't have to pay for this book. I paid for it and then I got paid back for it. Or I could have gotten paid back for it.
I did not know that you get reimbursed. Okay.
If you come to the sessions and contribute, you get reimbursed.
Yeah. If only being an agile coach paid enough for me to buy books.
Well, it does now. Because you can buy the book and contribute and you get the money back. There you go.
Oh, and coming back to a question that someone had, where is the link to the book club again? I just posted the link to the Agile Austin meetup site. So if you go there, you have all of the other meetups available: coaching SIG, Scrum Master SIG, book club, etc. Okay, I would encourage anybody to subscribe to that so you just get the alerts. Yeah, it is quite a bit of emails, about like 8 a month or something like that.
If that, and you can turn them off if you want to, but
You can
yeah,
turn them off.
if you go to the book club, I don't know if it should, there it is. There's the second one. It's up for in 2 weeks. One of the things that I put in there every month, or every time I book one of these things, is there's a link to all of the books that we have ever read. If you look at this discussion notes section down here, everything we've read recent last few years, we write our notes up, and you can go here, and this is a shared Google file or Google directory where all of our notes are stored, and they're all open for comment by anybody. Please read and comment those things, and maybe it'll encourage you to go read the book.
Yeah.
So
do you want to plug your book club for the 10th time, or do you
I don't? I think I'm done. I think I've had enough.
Okay, you're done.
We've just got 2 more. We've got 2 more minutes. Yeah, I can plug it one more time.
A round of applause, everybody, for Ned Horvath. Hey, Ned. Thank you for sharing Team Topologies with us. Awesome. And folks, in case you didn't see it on the chat, I put the link there for our next SIG in September. Feel free to go and sign up. And a shout out to the people that have joined from outside of Texas. We have people from Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Cincinnati, Colorado, Illinois, Virginia. We always have someone from Canada. Canada is always representing. Shout out to you. And
We love Canada.
Love Canada, just Canada and the Canadians, I mean, in general. And then from Texas, we had Dallas, Houston, but the biggest shout out, as always, to our Austinites, because we're always the largest in number. Way to go, folks, way to go.
Yeah, South America. Don't forget South America.
Oh, wait, the South America too. Sorry, let me update my notes here. But you got to be more specific. You can't just say the whole continent. Which
Argentina.
country? Hey, Argentina. Okay.
So that's 2 time zones ahead of us, or 1?
2 hours. 2 hours.
It's 2 hours ahead of us. I know Chile has 1 hour ahead of us. I didn't know Argentina was 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
So shout out to everybody. We start on time, we end on time. As I said, we're going to send out the links via a meetup to the recording, the chat notes, everything, Ted's presentation. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Stay safe, be well. We'll see you in the future, okay? Take care. And we had 55 people. That was like a record attendance. Okay.
You promised me 50.
Thanks, Ned.
You promised me 50, and you came through. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you, Ned. Way to go.
Thanks, Ned.
And please comment. Please comment. I want to improve this thing.
Mhm.
Or contact you directly. I mean, on LinkedIn.
You can do that too.
There you
But
go.
it's better if you go work on the shared document. That way we communicate efficiently.
Okay. You don't have to talk to Ned. You can just
No,
go
you don't have to
comment.
talk to me.
You just go comment in the documents. Thank you for joining, folks. I'll stick around till everybody has dropped off.
Thank you, Max. And
Matt,
I do owe you another talk about the art of action. I'll do that in a few months. So when you get a slot, let me know and I'll fill that one in.
and we've been here for 10 years. We'll be here for another 10.
I would imagine. That's the theory. You know, you're always halfway through the lifespan of any organization.
New York.
Catholic Church has another 2,000 years to go on the average.
At least you're always halfway through of your organization. Wait, so since I'm leaving my present company next Friday, that wouldn't really apply to me, but okay. But I get it.
But when you go to the next company, you're expected, you know what the trend is on the length of job you've had, and I do too. I actually went through a process one time where I worked at Penn State for 3 years.
Yes.
I worked for a company in Florida for 1.5 years. And I worked at another company in Massachusetts for 9 months. So I was on an exponential decay on my job. So I went to the next place. It was Bell Labs. I was there for 12 years. So
there you go. So
I broke the.
That's good, because I'm in the same kind of a scenario. I was at Dell for 12 years, General Motors for 7 years, and Whole Foods for 2.5. I thought it'd be a Whole Foods for
You're on
longer.
exponential decay, baby.
But we're going to put it up there again with PayPal. Come on.
I'm betting on 1.5 years of PayPal.
At least 3 years so that my stocks can vest.
But here's
At
what's
least
happened.
3 years.
As you've identified today, you've now seen so many companies and the way they do and don't do things. You're ripe to be a consultant. So your next job is going to be either forever or 2 weeks, whichever how you want to define it.
It's funny you bring that up. In the long term, I would like to do that in the long term. Okay. But I'm going to make it to 3 years at least. Well, if it's up to me.
We're starting the clock.
Oh, folks, you guys are awesome. Ned, always a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Jim, Bill, it's good to see folks again.
Absolutely.
Thank
Mona,
you.
nice to see you again. I didn't expect to see you again so soon.
Nice to meet. I think we met yesterday night, right?
We did.
Oh my God,
Oh, okay.
I was so sleepy. I was thinking.
That was a long time ago, Mona.
She was thinking she had deja vu,
Yeah.
that she was seeing the same guy she'd seen last night.
Yeah,
And,
the meeting was very late. It was till midnight, and I don't know how I was half sleepy at the end.
As I recall, you're from Easton, Pennsylvania.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay.
I'm from Pennsylvania.
Well, that's a time zone away. Wait,
That's
till
Eastern,
midnight?
that's Eastern time, yeah.
Yes,
Well, it was
midnight.
in California. It was a meeting that started in California at 7. So it was 9 here and 10 in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I was in the same conference. It was really interesting.
It was great.
Yet another book that we've read in the book club, Thinking Fast and Slow,
Yeah.
was the heart of this woman's presentation. And she was basically saying, stop thinking so hard, think hard for 10 minutes, and then go to sleep. And in the morning, you'll know the answer. Just do that all the time. Let system one do all the work.
And you know what? I'm sure there's studies around that and everything that actually prove that can very much work a lot of times. Yes, it sounds good.
It's happened to everybody. You get the answer in the shower in the morning.
Your other answer to your decay, incidentally, is
You'll have my answer to my decay, Bill.
that thing. You'll laugh for another 10 years.
We will
after
have to
you're
touch
done your
base in
job.
2023, okay?
That's
Okay,
right.
we'll have that. I'll put it on the calendar. Contact Ned and Bill, August 2023.
And
For
see
an
where you're
update.
working.
Until
See where Max is working.
Oh, folks.
We'll all know where Max is working. We will
Oh my
all know.
goodness. Do you know what I should have done? I should have stopped the recording of this a while ago.
You can trim it if you want to. I've got the tooling if you want me to trim it for
Ned,
you. That's
I
fine.
don't have anything to hide, okay? I don't
No?
have anything to.
Yes, you do. You just don't believe it.
I got
Okay.
one for you. The
Do I have to stop the recording, Bill?
Peter Diamandis, and
Ex-prize guy?
Kurzweil and the singularity. Tell me when your singularity is. Our tag meeting is going to have a guy who you can get a 12-month education on it, and he's on his way. He's the next Jeff Bezos or whatever. Right?
Mm.
See, I mean,
What's your
that's where
singularity?
you're from, Max.
Mhm.
Yeah, and they stay around. They don't wait to be. They're not going to be bought. And there are a couple of them here in town
Yes,
from the West Coast.
but everyone has their price at the same time.
Mm. I've encountered people like that, and I think I worry about their ego being able to make the right decisions. If they aren't willing to sell their company to somebody who can make it better, yeah, that means that they don't think it can be made better.
No, they aren't. Right now, they're capitalists and they're 20 years old, fresh out of.
Yes, yeah.
Never mind that.
And the one comment I have on this to end is my approach to this. Of course, I've never been in the scenario, but I am very strong a believer of democratic approaches. Why not have the company, people that have been around you that helped build the whole thing, even though you're the person that had, the idea to start with, vote on it. Do you want us to sell and everybody cashes out? Everybody cashes out. Or do you want to keep this journey going and let's see how it's going? When you get people involved and they have skin in the game, I just feel the outcome can be more productive.
Yeah, but there is still one guy. His name for you or for another couple of hours is Bezos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who will make the largest chunk of the money and whatnot?
Right.
But yeah.
But he has it, and he doesn't have to have stockholders for his stuff.
It's harder not to exit when if you have investors, it's harder to say, I'm not going to exit.
Oh, no. Well, that's a different scenario. Yeah, like you don't have a choice there. You don't have a choice.
But you leave the Amazon behind. Now next will be EWS after that, and you go on to your next love.
Yeah.
And his love, his father was an astronaut. His love is space.
There you go.
Whatever it's called.
More power. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I gotta go. Thank you for inviting me, Max. I'll come and see you again. Mona, nice seeing you again, and come again.
Nice to see you again. Yeah, sure. Can I do a little advertisement here?
I'm sorry?
It's
Plug
off the record, but I do run facilitation for Liberty Structure. If you're interested, or anyone interested, I will put it in the chat. I run a meetup once a month.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And
if you put it in the
yeah, I'll put it probably in your page because I cannot copy paste it on you.
But I was going to say, if you put it in the chat, at least when I post it, like the chat link, then all the people that signed up for the meetup, 100 and something people, 20 people will see that, right? Instead of just the 8 that we have now, which are the best 8 by far. Mona.
We are the people who are staying in the parking lot, just, after party. Come on, go away.
It's nice that they're preserving the chat. They used to not, but what we've had to do at TAG is we just have our own Slack channel. You may have to do that.
No. Like, the chat is going to be in the link. Yeah, if you do a recording, you get the recording, you get a separate thing that it doesn't have the camera stuff. Is just like an audio, and you also get the chat. They give you like 3 or 4 things when you do a recording. Zoom, I can talk another hour about how Zoom has just covered the market completely compared to everybody else. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Great day, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care.